you will get frustrated.
Yeah.
You will 100% be frustrated, and that is normal. It is a very, can be frustrating and time-consuming tool
100%.
to learn, but it's such a valuable tool and will add so much production value to your films and to you as an artist when people want to hire you.
Welcome back to another episode of the Rough Cut Club. I'm your host, Joey Nicotra, here with my co-host, Mr. Shane Wrightsammer. What's going on, brother?
What's up, everybody? Excited about this one, man. I think we kind of come from the same background and belief system, but we'll see. So what episode is this? What are we talking about?
So today we are going to be having the Great Gimbal Debate, talking about the difference between manual stabilizers versus mechanized stabilizers, some of the good things, some of the bad things, the pros and the cons, and just riffing a little bit back and forth on, some of the things that you like, some of the things that you dislike, when you use them, when you don't, and why they're a tool that can be used in different situations.
That's right, man. And I feel like what you just said there, too, that it's a tool and it really depends on the shot, right? But I got a question for you,
okay,
man.
Yeah.
If I can just jump
right in, bro.
Okay.
Let's go.
All right. So what was your first gimbal ever?
So very first gimbal was a GlideCam HD 2000 back in the day. This is, I think, pre-mechanized gimbals actually ever existing. Like, I think they had like the big boy ones that were, thousands of dollars, but they didn't have like the prosumer versions of the gimbals back in the day. And so I started out on GlideCams. And even pre-meeting you, I was already utilizing them several years ago, and that's what I started out on.
I remember when you showed up to one of the first sets I ever hired you to be on. I think it was like a event recap or something.
Yeah.
We were working a conference, and you showed up and you had the GlideCam, HD. What did you say? 2000.
HD 2000. Yep.
And I was like, yes. This guy's got the same setup as I do, and then I was watching. You were fresh out of college, and but you had experience, which is I could tell with how you were using the GlideCam. And if any glide cameras out there, it's all about the touch, the finessing.
It's the Midas touch.
Yeah, and that takes a long time to learn. And I saw that you were already doing that technique instead of, you saw a lot of people with GlideCam or any of the weighted, not mechanized gimbals. They would be sitting there and they would like swing the arm, right? Or they would try to do it one-handed and not giving that guide touch. So yeah, man, that's great. I saw the GlideCam in your hands and I go, cool, we've got a base starting point together.
GlideCammer. That's right.
Yeah.
Well,
shout out GlideCam.
Yeah, shout out to GlideCam for sure. But there's a lot of differences on these two different types of stabilizers. But I want to talk about some of the things that are different between the two, and kind of just see how you approached back when you were shooting more often.
Retired.
Before he's now a big shot director, producer. He used to be a cam operator, and now he's not anymore. But back in the day, how you would go about choosing which one. And so one of the things that I definitely noticed is how the movement between the two are different. Do you want to dive into some of the specifics on how you feel like the movement is translated differently when you use a mechanized versus mechanical?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences, right? Back when we were using mechanical GlideCam, and not that I wouldn't still use it, there's still times that you need to use it, but there are only certain moves that you can do with those types of gimbals and setup stabilizers, right? So, for example, moving towards like a push and pull, right? You can do push and pulls with it very smoothly. You can kind of go up and down, like pedestal up, pedestal down, or if you want to call it dolly up, dolly down. But you can't get as much movement and motion as a mechanized now, right? And so that was kind of a game changer to go, wow, I can do a really big type jib shot that I couldn't do with the mechanical. But to the same point, unless you've mastered the mechanical or the mechanized, some of the shots you do on the mechanical is actually smoother, in my opinion,
right,
and more natural looking. And I know that's opening up a whole nother topic, so I'm going to save it.
Well, and I actually agree. So I think a lot of times there's just a naturalness that comes with the mechanical stabilizers that is, no gimbal out there that has a motor telling it where to move is going to be able to replicate to the same degree, because it is, just a weighted system. How the camera moves, it really does glide and float through the air in ways that, in my opinion, translates to a more natural looking shot than gimbals. But that being said, there are also shots that you can't do on a steady cam that you could do on a motorized gimbal, like the 360 barrel roll, for instance. What I mean? They have that dialed down now, where it's a super niche creative shot. I use it a lot in hype reel, music video type settings, more so than like narrative stuff. Although we did use it for our horror movie not long ago.
That's right.
But
check
things
out
like
What
that.
Lies Within.
Yeah, check out What Lies Within. But there are some, shots that's not really a natural movement, so to speak. You could do it on a like a mechanical stabilizer, but I mean, Gimbal's got that move dialed down, and they make it so easy to execute so quickly.
Yeah, and I want to jump in because I think a lot of it comes down to the operator, right? And I think this opens up. This is where I really want to dive in, and maybe this is the old school mentality. But I always say you can tell if somebody was trained on a mechanical gimbal first. There's so many filmmakers out there picking up the mechanized gimbals, and some of them are doing really dope stuff with it, right? They are utilizing the tool in the correct way, and others, you see a lot of people that just start out. And even when I picked up the mechanized at the beginning, I'm like, oh, you can do all these types of movements, and none of it's natural, though. You don't see those types of movements, going forward and then going to the side, and you have to realize what is natural and makes sense for the shot. And people are pushing boundaries and changing the art form of those moving shots, so it's important. But I will say two things. The advantage of starting on a mechanical over a mechanized is that it's the body positioning of a gimbal operator, right? And so, like, going back to that first time watching you, even just, the hand touch is a little different now. Obviously, we were the mechanized gimbal, right? Our fingers we were guiding it in the direction we wanted, but the body posture was everything too, right? You have to have a certain stance, and you have to master that stance to not translate any of the vibration and bumps into the mechanical gimbal.
Yeah.
And so when we would get footage back from some of our shooters down the road, right? Like, I remember you and I talking about this same discussion. We said, why is there so many bumps and shakes and like
micro jitters?
And you see this walking thing, and sometimes it's the person does not properly balance their mechanized gimbal, and that's step number one. You got to master that, just like we had to do that with the mechanical. But it's the walk, because then we watch and we see them actually walking with it, and you go, oh, bro, you can't walk like that. Yeah. You're shooting all of that energy up through your knees, and that's why we're seeing this bobbing and bounce movement.
It's the ninja walk. You got to master the ninja walk.
That's right.
For the mechanical stabilizers, which you don't necessarily have to do when you just put a gimbal in somebody's hands, but I think it 100% helps to minimize those movements and those jitters that you see with the camera bobbing up and down. And so people that started out, to your point, on a glide cam or a steady cam or something like that, and have learned how to operate that, are going to have an easier time translating that movement over to a gimbal whenever they go to operate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk real quick about the weight of them, because there's a lot of different kinds of whether you're using like a real small end one, or a larger, there's all sorts of different weights of them. But some you need to wear a vest on. Others you need a ready rig. You need these different type of contraptions. In your experience, how has the weight distribution just like over time been for you?
Well, let me say this, that my age and the lack of working out like I used to, I need a ready rig for all of them, bro. I need to just go ahead and strap on the vest. Yeah. No, but man, I've loved seeing that evolution. So going back to GlideCam, right? I had the HD 2000. I had the XR 1000, which was the little like smaller one. I had the HD 2000.
Yeah.
Then I got the 4000, and then I got the Pro. Right.
Yep.
And the Pro was, oh my gosh, I'm like, this is so much lighter.
Yeah.
This is going to save my back. This is great. And then if you want to talk about mechanized, when DJI Ronin came out with stuff, and going back, you were like, there was one, and I think it was Freefly Movi. It was actually, I remember watching and seeing this like gimbal being created, and I saw it was like in Russia or Germany. I can't remember, but it blew my mind. I was like, this is cool. And it was like $10,000 or $20,000 at the time, just for that unit. And then obviously it came down and became more accessible for the general pop. But those started off super big. They weren't all the DJI, Ronin S and whatever you had. See, this is the old guy. He only I stopped at the Ronin S. There's a bunch of others out there. So, those are really lightweight and compact. Which was great. But if we're talking pro level, Movi Freefly or even the DJI Ronin Pro, I always like having some sort of support, depending on what project we're working on, right? If it's, if you're talking a small shot, quick, run, event recap, you're a wedding videographer, you don't need, in my opinion, that big bulky gear, okay? Unless you're working maybe a big crew, you got red team, and you got somebody just dedicated to gimbal and just rocking it all day. But in a lot of those situations, you're picking it up, you're shooting, you're putting it down. Yeah. Now on a feature film set, documentary or anything, or a commercial set where you have a long, take or a oneer, I'm all about throwing on the ready rig, throwing on something to give you some support, because you will fatigue. And going back to that body posture, your fatigue will then affect your shot. Right. And I've noticed that. I've gimbaled on the Movi Freefly for a long time now. And man, I mean, especially, I love long takes, oneers, right? And like, 2.5, 3 minute, 5 minute take. And you're like, oh, we want take 6, 7, 8. Yeah. I think I did, I think it was 8 takes in Washington's Armor on this long ballroom scene. And I was toast, even with the ready rig, man. Yeah. You start fatiguing, and it will translate to your gimbal.
And even for some of the people who aren't operating on like Movies and whatnot, the glide cams or the steady cams and whatnot, you hold all of the weight in one of your arms. When you upgrade to the actual steady cams and the vests and stuff like that, it kind of helps distribute the weight throughout your whole body. But when you're getting started and you're using like a smaller, prosumer level 1, all of the weight is in one wrist. And so depending on how heavy your build out is, without an actual support vest, it becomes pretty difficult really quick. So one of the things though that I don't like about the mechanical stabilizers though is when you're operating outside and there's wind, it totally throws my whole experience off with them, because if it's a pretty windy day and you don't have an extremely heavy rig that can counter out the wind, your whole stabilization, your horizon line's going to be very, very slanted. And so that to me is one of the big disadvantages of steady cams for sure.
Yeah, I agree, and I've definitely experienced that. And even in some high wind, you can get some gnarly stuff with the mechanical, but it definitely doesn't.
You kind of have to offset though,
right?
And then you're not getting the full, just like true balanced out rig,
right?
So
I will say, and I'm going to ask you this question: are there certain projects or types of filmmaking that you would still choose a mechanical over a mechanized.
Yeah. Well, and so yes, the answer to that question is if it is like a fast-paced event recap type project, or a run and gun shoot altogether, I think that having a, a mechanical stabilizer is super handy in getting quicker shots, especially if you have like a zoom lens, where when you actually zoom and you're offsetting the focus. If you do that with a gimbal, you're actually frying the motors up and damaging your equipment, and whatnot. But I'll say, like, for narrative and in the feature space, whenever you're doing dialogue, like walking scenes, or floating through somewhere where the camera is panning as it's as you're pushing, where you're doing more than just like a straight push and pull shot. I really feel like the mechanical Steadicam rigs with the vest have the more natural movement that I want translated in my feature narrative work. That being said, I normally don't have a budget to make that happen. And you and I own the Movi, and so we tend to utilize it more in that space. But I do think that the Steadicam is a better tool for just having the movement being translated on those projects. On that same note, what I love about the Movi is how versatile it is to be utilized in numerous different ways. You can be operating it. You can pass it to another person. You can rig it to a jib. You can rig it to a car. You can do, it's way more compact, and so you can fit it inside of a car. There's so many different ways that you can utilize the tool that I feel like it is more versatile in nature. But I do feel like the movement that you see from a Movi or a gimbal does not outbeat the mechanical stabilizers. But I do feel like they are a more versatile tool that can get more jobs done. The wind isn't a problem, things like that. And so I do feel like the versatility, they definitely take the edge.
I love that about Movi, because I think it was the Ninja Star that we bought, and then the Toten Hole, you can pop that off quickly, pop it on the jib, and throw up the Mimic, and then I'm good to go. I'm
you
good
can
to
operate it without even holding it.
Right. And so the versatility, like you said, and the speed on set, and I will say this too, Movi takes a long time to learn how to be, even just balance the dang thing, and then be a good operator on it. And I'm still learning every day, or every set, right? Or even before the set, hopefully. But there's a lot of tech that goes on with it too that can go wrong. You got to have all your additional pieces and wrapping the cables and making sure that nothing's tugging and pulling. But I love that setup. But I want to go back. I agree with you on the mechanical. And this is again back when I was filming. I'm going to just give a case study sample, right? I remember back when I was filming wedding films, and I had the DJI Ronin S. I was super pumped about the new, toy, the new piece of gear, and had practiced with it. But I took it to a wedding, and I put it up and broke back the glide cam out, because to your point, it is a little more run and gun. And, when you are switching glide cam, you can pop on and off the camera super quick. And the movements that I were needing to get weren't that technical, where I needed a lot of different movement that I couldn't get with the glide cam. And so I was way faster, and probably that was a comfort thing as well. I was way more comfortable. And later, as I progressed using the two systems, I did keep the Ronin S, but I had to get a second body. I got a second body camera, which is a good idea anyways. But I would have one that was like my wide and tights, and then I would have my gimbal cam just set and sitting and waiting for me, because that was the other thing. The speed to take it on and off, it just took a little time. Like, you pop it back on, you had to make tweaks. So, it goes back to that saying, the right, tool for the job, right? And the shot. And so I can definitely see him being used depending on what you need for that shot. But I had to share that wedding film story, man. I remember bringing it to a wedding and just and using it for like 5 minutes and being like, this ain't it. I got to put this up. Yeah.
Yep. Well, I know that I have definitely had like an ebb and flow in, my preference in using one versus the other. The time it takes to set them up, or, like with a Movi, I will only actually break that out if there is two cameras. If there's just one camera, it takes way too much time to go, from that back to sticks or handheld back onto it. It just takes so much time. Where on a steady cam, it's a very easy process to mount and unmount it from whatever sled you're on, and so for me that's also a factor of, do we have two cameras that we can play. So that's just another food for thought.
Absolutely, and that's exactly why we ended up investing in getting the Komodo. Something smaller, which reduced the weight on the Movi, which helps the operator. But then also something that, then we could fly two cameras at an economical approach, right? Because that's what we run into as well. Client only has budget for one camera.
Right.
And if we really want to get this shot with the Movi for this commercial or this brand spot or this music video, you're going to kill an hour and a half to, break down your build, put it on the Movi, and then put it back. So, great point, man. I couldn't agree more.
The other thing, too, is you got to make sure you got batteries charged for mechanized gimbals versus stabilizers. So batteries aren't needed at all when you're just offsetting with weight and whatnot. But if you don't have, it's really not a huge deal. It's just something to keep in mind. If you have limited batteries, or someone didn't know how to charge them properly or something, or we were even having problems with our Movi batteries. One of them recently where they had to, I don't even remember what had to happen. The internal components had to
reset the battery cells, basically.
Like the cells and the batteries were, wonky. And so anyway, just another thing that you have to manage when you're using a gimbal that you don't have to manage when using a stabilizer.
That's right. Stabilizer, the battery is your arms.
The battery is your arms.
Yeah.
You are the battery.
Yeah. Hey, so I got a question for maybe some of the newer filmmakers that might be listening in. How do you get started? Because, again, going back to 2010, when I started using stabilizers, so frustrating, and that's what I hear from so many people. This is frustrating, and you see a lot of gimbals, on different types of gimbals, from glide cams to mechanized, Ronins, whatever.
Yeah.
On secondary markets being sold, right? Facebook Marketplace, ShareGrid, whatever, because people get frustrated with them. So, newer filmmaker, I want to learn how to, be a gimbal pro on said system.
Yeah.
How do you start?
Well, I think that there is value in learning both. I do think that, if you're getting started, you're trying to, decide to buy your first one and whatnot. I think that there is actual value in having both tools if you can, afford the expense of both. What I'll say about mechanized is, in my opinion, that is a really great piece of equipment to buy used, because there's no moving parts. What you see is kind of what you get, and I would have no problems buying one of those from somebody if they've been used, but I would have a lot of reservations buying a gimbal used, just because I don't know what the previous owner, I don't know how they took care of the motor. And so the motor could go out on you very shortly after if it's been abused by, not dialing in the weight and whatnot perfectly. So if you can swing both, I would buy a used mechanical stabilizer, and I would buy a brand new out the box mechanized stabilizer. And so that's where I would start. I would buy used on one. I would not go brand new on the other, if budget is an issue. That said, if you learn how to start on a mechanical stabilizer, you are going to be a better operator on a gimbal, because of the, learning the movements and, the motions of natural, steady cam operating.
And realistic shots, like we talked about,
totally.
Right? You get a lot of these guys going left and right and forward and stuff, and it's like, again, depending on what you're doing, maybe it makes sense for a music video. but you can make up a lot of bad looking shots
Right.
with the mechanized, where the mechanical you can't really make
Right.
up bad shots. You're kind of locked into a certain limited
Totally.
amount of shots.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, man. You gotta, if you can learn on that
Yeah.
first, it just teaches you the fundamentals of a moving camera.
100%. And there is a bigger learning curve, in my opinion, to learning the mechanical methods. And so to become a skilled operator, it's not one of those things that you can say, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this for a week or two and even a month or two and really feel dialed in as an operator. Like, it is a journey to become a talented, Steadicam operator, which is why they make, such great day rates, is because it's not like, it is a very difficult skill to learn how to do at a high level. But if you're willing to, do the climb and the journey of, putting in your hours to become an expert at it, when you pick up a motorized gimbal, I think that you will become a better operator, having put your 10,000 hours in, becoming an expert at, a mechanical stabilizer.
Yeah, I agree. So going to actually doing the work and being the expert, like, where do you start, right? Like, how do you learn the techniques?
Yeah. Well, man, I'm a big proponent of not having your very first day with a new piece of equipment on set. If you've never used a tool in your toolkit offset, it is not the first place to learn on set.
Never.
And so for me, I shot a ton of passion projects when I was getting started where I could fail forward in learning how to, operate properly. That said, if you have time to do it in your free time, chasing your dog around a house, chasing a family member, across the yard, tracking, whatever it is, even just filming static, without an object in the frame, learning how to balance it properly. And it's really like the majority of it is all in for me, it's my left hand, is how I move the stabilizer when I utilize it, because I'm holding the weight with my right hand. I'm using my left hand to turn the gimbal.
Same.
And so learning how to become an expert at the smallest Midas touch of, the little things here and there, to where you can translate a movement like you want to, and not just like, oh, this is what's happening. Like, it's full control. I'm getting the exact shot that I will, desired to. I think there's just a ton of practice needed to become good at that.
Funny flashback story. So again, this is circa 2012 or something,
Yeah.
and gone through some gimbals and was on the glide cam, and huge fan of Devin Supertramp. I was like, this guy's slaying it.
The GOAT. Shout out.
Yes, and good job, Devin. And then watching, I was like, how does he get his shot so well? And back then, we'd search YouTube or even eHow and stuff back then, and couldn't really find videos that you can now, right? There's so many good tutorials, and that's what I was going to say is get a mentor
Totally
to teach you, or watch a lot of YouTube videos and practice, right? Like you said. But back then, I couldn't find anything on YouTube on how these people were operating these glide cams, and finally, I found a video of somebody that had filmed Devin. They had caught him, maybe it was one of his BTS guys. It was way back early on with him even, I think, and it was somebody that was stopped him in the street. Maybe it was staged, but he was like, hey, hey, show us the technique, Devin, and Devin talked about that touch, that little. He's like, this is how I guide it. This is the stance. He gave a little quick breakdown to, I think, a fan is who recorded and put it on YouTube. I watched that video and it changed my entire glide cam game. So I'd say look for the right videos too. There's a lot of tutorials out there, but find mentors in person if you can and get some of that one-on-one. But then you got to put in the work and practice. But then also find even a mentor online, right? Find that Devin Supertramp, that person that you say, wow, they're an expert at this tool, and let me learn from them. And again, at the time, you didn't have a lot. I think they have master classes, all sorts of stuff out now. But find that person and then learn their techniques, and then master them yourself.
Yep. Dig it. So if somebody is thinking about getting one or the other, and they're only going to get one, in your opinion, which tool are you going to tell them to start with? You got to pick one. Choose your fighter.
I have to cheat on this. I'm going to say, well, what kind of projects are you working on? Because if you're a wedding videographer and you're just starting out, I'm going to tell you a mechanical. Because you're probably got a one camera body and you're flipping between, taking it off, doing different shots. Same thing, event recap. So if you're kind of starting out, maybe mechanical, because I really want you to learn on that too, selfishly. But if you are a little more advanced, but you want to get into the gimbals, I would say mechanized. And you have like different types of projects where you're needing those different types of shots. So I'm leaning towards mechanized, I would say. Just because I do think there's a little bit more that you can do with it.
I would agree.
But the mechanical, man, there's just something about it. Like we said, there's like this
how the motion
magical,
translates.
Yeah. It's hard to beat human-directed motion and moves with the mechanical gimbals. And the mechanized, but it's hard to beat the versatility and the utility of the shots that you can do with the mechanized.
I agree, bro. I agree. Well, I think this has been a great episode. Is there anything else before we sign off that you want to chop up on the gimbal debate, or anything else you want to leave your audience with?
Man, I can't think of anything else other than practice.
Yeah.
And you will get frustrated.
Yeah.
You will 100% be frustrated, and that is normal when you balance the dang thing.
Yeah.
That's normal. Like, walk away. Give it some time. Come back. Watch another video. You're missing something.
Yeah.
You're missing. So find out what you're missing. Once that you're gonna have like a lot of aha light bulb moments, and like just don't give up on it, because it is a very can be frustrating and time consuming tool
100%.
to learn, but it's such a valuable tool and will add so much production value to your films and to you as an artist when people want to hire you.
We're going to have to clip that. That was a great soundbite. Nice. Well, dude, thank you so much for putting your 2 cents in. Before we sign off, I want to make sure that I tell all of our listeners, one, if you've made it to this episode, we are stoked and we appreciate you, and welcome to the show. But it would mean the world to us if you followed us on all social platforms. Stay connected, stay in touch. If you have questions, shoot us a DM. We're here to answer your questions as well and get connected with our audience. And it would mean the world to us if, on whatever podcast platform you're listening to, you could drop a review on that, because that will help us grow to give you guys more content like this. So thank you guys, and please leave a review.
Absolutely. Man, I want to go break out the glide cam, bro.
100%. We got to do it.
Let's
Good
go.
episode, brother.